Hello gamers, it's me, Velosofy, back to do a new video. Yet again, took another break. Been some things going on in my life. Nothing bad or concerning, overly concerning or anything like that. Just in the middle of transitioning. We'll be moving probably in the next few months. We're making some changes, and I'll kind of dive into that. But anyway, today's video is more centered around what I learned about therapy and how it actually helped me. I'm basically just doing it for the benefit of others because I've had people reach out in my personal life and my work life and just friends or whatever, and just asking questions. How did it benefit me? So I wanted to cover that. I tried to come up with at least 5 things to kind of get a running theme going here. One of the first things that I learned about was no longer needing to use my survival skills. If you know a little bit about my background and how I came up and how I grew up in poverty, and I was on welfare and had to struggle, and my mother was a drug addict and my stepdad, he was too, and just dealt with a lot of hardships with physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, and all kinds of stuff as a kid coming up, and that kind of messed with me. And so being around violence and seeing people being beaten up and folks and violent, all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. Learning through this whole process of 5 months of therapy, I had PTSD, and I still suffer from that because I would get triggered by things. So anyway, one of the first things that I learned was to no longer use my survival skills and just thrive. Not feeling like I had to protect myself, because when I was in that environment, your mind just immediately switches over and you felt like you had to go into survival mode, because I've had people break in my home when I was a kid and completely knock the door off the hinge and everything. And so in a dead middle of the night, when that would happen, that immediately puts your body into shock mode. And so you're like, either I survive or something's going to happen. So that was one of the first things that I learned that actually helped me to bring that wall down. Even at the age of 42, I still had that wall up, feeling like I had to look over my shoulder, or I had to size a person up to see what they really was about. So the next thing that I learned about was boundaries. The crazy thing is, I never really set boundaries when it came to friends or family members. And really, when boundaries, when I hear that word personally, it's just for your own protection. So you don't put yourself in a position where you feel like you always got to do something for somebody. And it's really taking you not only out of your comfort zone, but it's putting you in a position where you feel uneasy. It's like, I'm doing something for the sake of others, or I'm allowing this person into my life and I know they don't mean for my good. A lot of the things that I had to begin to work out was the boundaries that weren't set with my mother and with my stepdad. And see, with him being physically abusive, she still allowed him to be in our lives, in her life. And so then it became an awkward situation. Well, one day, while I'm going through therapy, and even a little bit beforehand, I started to draw some things together. Even at this age of 42, there's still stuff that I'm figuring out. Learning that if it's not going to benefit me to be around, meaning is it going to be a negative set environment or negative energy that I gotta constantly be around, and as an introvert it's draining me, but also learning that this is taken away from me and I don't like this uneasy feeling. So I had to start learning how to set that with coworkers and with family members and with friends, and being okay, because it's crazy, because there's things that I'm okay with saying no to. I have this perspective about life that if I can look down the road and I can see that it's a no, I'll say no now to save myself. But when it came to boundaries, there really wasn't a lot of boundaries set, and so at the end of the day, I really was suffering. So one of the next things that I did learn about was triggers. the whole main reason why I even started going back to therapy, because I've gone to therapy in my 20s for my anger and being explosive and upset, and I went through anger management. I went through intense therapy in my 20s, and in my 30s I went more for the sexual abuse, being molested as a kid, and how that psychologically basically fucked me up. And being introduced to porn, molested at 6, and then being introduced to porn at 12, and how those things kind of came together, dealing with that, and yet again the triggers with that, and there's been numerous occasions where it made it difficult for my sexual life, or my anger, like people coming up on me, because once you've been violated sexually, it doesn't matter if it was a female or a male or whatever the case was. Once you've been violated, now your mind goes into, yet again, it's a guard that comes around. So anybody comes inside of that, you immediately get triggered. Or if you feel like, for me, what started happening, not only that, because I'm talking about my triggers and what I started to learn about, what was the triggers was from the PTSD, feeling like the walls is caving in, or somebody's violating your space. And it started to getting down to as little as somebody not doing something that I asked them to do the first time. I immediately would get triggered by that. Or somebody messing with my private things, like maybe my games, or maybe my computer, or just invading my space, or crowding around in my space. That would immediately trigger. I wouldn't say anything, but I could feel myself getting angry. And rather than deal with that trigger, I would just allow that to just carry on. So therapy has helped me to deal with that. So now, because what you do is you identify what's causing the trigger, getting down to the root. This is where all this stuff derives from. We have to remember, anger is just a facade, or it's not even a facade, it's a cover up for your emotions. It's like a wall that's being put up. That's anger. But behind that, you have all your true emotions. I'm hurt. I feel violated. I feel sad. I feel upset. I feel unwanted. I feel not needed. All this stuff. So those walls, once those walls come down, you still, you don't have as many triggers anymore. I'll probably have PTSD probably for the rest of my life, because the next thing that I had to learn about was narratives. And narratives can be like a storyline. Like we always hear a storyline. You know how we used to play that game where one kid would have something whispered in his ear, and then he would whisper it to the next person, and the next person to the next person, and so on and so forth? Well, for me, I had to learn about true narratives, what's being said versus what I hear. And that automatically plays into all my other things, my anger, my triggers, my PTSD, my anxiety, and panic attacks, and all of that stuff. Because that was the other thing that came from my PTSD, is the anxiety and panic attacks. Very severe, very tough stuff to deal with. But the narratives would automatically make me feel like, oh, this person's out to get me, or this person is saying something about me. But if I actually listened to what the person was saying, I would hear directly what they're actually saying, or even ask them to clarify, just to make sure, hey, did I hear you correctly? Did you just call me a punk, or you call me a bitch, or whatever? Because in the hood, that's trigger words. You can't call them a grown man soft or a bitch or whatever. We immediately go into fight mode. I watched an interview with Jay-Z, because he'd been through therapy, and this was a couple years ago. He looked at another guy when he was in the hood. Oh, you're afraid that I see you, and that's why you feel threatened and you want to fight me. Because the truth of the matter is, people are more concerned about you seeing their vulnerability, their insecurities, their things that they're not confident about. And that's the things that I had to learn how to develop, was confidence. In my 30s, I didn't even have confidence until then, because it wasn't instilled in me as a child. It wasn't instilled in me as a teenager. I didn't get affirmation nor confirmation. So I didn't know what what areas that I was doing well in. I just had to play the field and look at grades as confirmation. Oh, I'm doing well, rather than get that pat on the back from a parent or a loved one. I had to figure it out for myself. But anyway, circling back to the narratives itself, just realizing the storyline is what it is from the person and not thinking stuff. This is why people get so angry, because they misconstrue or they mishear or misread what the person is saying to them. They automatically, oh yeah, you got a problem with me. That's why you were, or you think I'm ugly, or you think I stink, or you think all this stuff. And really it's your own insecurities in your own head. And the last thing, one of the big last things that I dealt with, I mean, I've actually learned a lot. I just wanted to kind of focus on some of the key things, hoping that this benefits others, was grieving. You know, like I said, I lost four people that were really near and dear and close to my heart, and I think about them a lot. And a lot of people, which I'm so grateful for, were concerned. I had family members and I had friends. I even had coworkers reach out, especially when my good buddy passed away. You know, I knew that guy for 30 years, and it's just like, you can't switch that on and off. But I had to learn how to walk through all of my emotions, allow myself to cry about it, or feel upset, or feel angry that he's gone, or just like with my uncle being murdered, you know, that time was cut short, or one of my good friends who had cancer and, you know, going to her funeral, and then my other buddy who had COVID, who was just a loving, kind, sweet, gentle person who unfortunately left her spouse and her child behind, you know, and it's just a lot to process. But the big thing that I learned with grieving is just going through all your emotions and dealing with that. And honestly, to wrap everything up, I feel like I'm in my best place that I've ever been in my life. You know, I feel like now I don't have to doubt myself going into the next chapter as far as what I want to do, where I want to be. If I see something and I know that it's something that I desire, whether it's a higher position at the company or a new position, or to stretch beyond the parameters of this channel and do different things, I'm willing to do it because I'm already confident in myself. I believe in myself a lot more than I used to. So hopefully all these things that I talk about help us in some way, shape, form, matter, whatever. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as always. I'm Life Spiller.